Aliens pleaded for mercy, but the Deathworlders fleet only knows war part. For Captain Park Ji-won sat behind a desk in what used to be a Valdari governor's office. She was no longer a ship commander. Admiral Kang had promoted her to sector administrator. She now governed 50 million Valdari civilians across 8 conquered systems. Park tried to be fair. She established food distribution networks. She repaired infrastructure damaged in the fighting. She created councils where Valdari could voice concerns. She genuinely wanted to help these people rebuild their lives under human authority. The Valdari hated her anyway. They sabotaged every system she repaired. They refused to cooperate with human authorities. They spread rumors that humans were demons who ate Valdari children. Parents taught their kids to fear and despise all humans. Teachers presented human occupation as ultimate evil in their lessons. Park understood why. She had conquered their worlds, killed their soldiers, destroyed their empire. No amount of kindness could erase that. But she still had to maintain order. Every day brought new incidents, protests, sabotage, occasional violence. She responded with the minimum force necessary, trying to be better than the monster they believed her to be. After 6 months, she sent a report to Admiral Kang. Occupation is impossible. The Valdari will never accept human rule. We can either exterminate them or withdraw. There is no third option. Kang's response was brief. Maintain order at any cost. Park stared at those 5 words for an hour. She knew what they meant. Do whatever is necessary. Kill as many as required. Just keep them under control. She had become a prison warden for an entire species. Commander Lee Taeyang stood in the ruins of a residential district on Kelmar. His team had been ordered to suppress a civilian rebellion. The rebels were using captured weapons and fighting from homes and schools. They had taken human personnel as hostages. Taeyang's orders were clear. Eliminate the leadership, restore order. The operation turned into a bloodbath. His soldiers stormed the rebel positions with overwhelming force. The Valdari fought desperately, knowing they would die either way. Civilians caught in the crossfire had nowhere to run. When the shooting finally stopped, 600 Valdari were dead. Most were not even rebels, just people in the wrong place. Taeyang walked through the aftermath. Bodies lay in the streets. Blood stained the walls. A child's toy lay abandoned in a pool of dark liquid. He tried to remember when he had become the kind of person who ordered this. When had he stopped seeing people and started seeing only targets? He filed his resignation that night. Command denied it. The war needed experienced officers. They needed men who could do terrible things without breaking. They needed soldiers who had already crossed every moral line and could keep marching forward. Taeyang realized the horrible truth. He was valuable precisely because he still felt guilt. Officers who felt nothing were dangerous. Officers who felt everything became unstable. But officers who felt guilt and did the job anyway were perfect. They were monsters who knew they were monsters. Dr. Yoon Hana had spent months documenting human actions in the war. She recorded everything. Orbital bombardments of civilian targets, prison camps where Valdari were held in terrible conditions, destruction of cultural sites, mass executions of prisoners who resisted. She compiled 200,000 pages of evidence. She leaked everything to galactic media. Every image, every report, every piece of proof that humanity was committing atrocities. The galaxy reacted with horror. Over 200 million Valdari had died, military and civilian combined. Entire populations had been erased. Earth's government arrested Hana within hours. They charged her with treason, with aiding the enemy, with undermining the war effort. Her trial lasted 3 days. The prosecution argued that she had betrayed humanity during its struggle for survival. The defense argued that she was exposing crimes that violated human values. Hana testified in her own defense. She stood before the court and spoke clearly. She said that humanity was repeating the worst mistakes of its own history. That they were becoming the genocidal empires that Earth's nations had once been. That future generations would judge them as monsters if they did not stop. The court found her guilty. They sentenced her to 10 years imprisonment. As guards led her away, she looked at the cameras broadcasting her trial. She spoke one last time. We won the war the moment we became willing to do anything to win. We lost our humanity the same day. Lieutenant Choi Daiho returned to Earth on leave. He had been in combat for 18 straight months, 187 confirmed kills, dozens of successful missions. He was a certified war hero. The government scheduled ceremonies, parades, medals. During a public event, a reporter asked how it felt to defend humanity. Choi answered honestly, "It feels like becoming everything we hate." The broadcast editors cut his response from the official recording, but people had heard it. The comments spread through underground networks. Other veterans began speaking up. They formed support groups, sharing stories they could not tell their families. Stories about killing prisoners, about destroying civilian targets, about following orders they knew were wrong. Choi met with other pilots who flew the same missions. They sat in a quiet bar, drinking and not talking. Finally, one pilot spoke. "I have dreams where I am the monster, where children run from me in terror, where I deserve their fear." Everyone at the table nodded. They all had the same dreams. They all knew what they had become. Heroes to humanity. Demons to the Valdari. The truth was probably somewhere in between. They were soldiers who had done terrible things for good reasons, or good things for terrible reasons, or maybe there was no difference anymore. Ambassador Nirazol made one final attempt at negotiation. She could not reach Admiral Kang or the human government. They refused all contact with Valdari officials. But Dr. Yoon Hana was in prison on Earth. Perhaps she could help. Nirazol bribed guards to arrange a secret meeting. She sat across from Hana in a prison visiting room. The human looked exhausted but determined. Nirazol presented her final proposal: total surrender, dissolution of the Valdari military, human oversight of Valdari government, reparations for 500 years, half of all Valdari territory ceded to humanity. In exchange, the war would end. The Valdari would survive as a species. They would accept punishment and limitation, but they would live. Hana listened carefully. She smuggled a message to Admiral Kang through channels she still had access to. She presented the Valdari proposal. She argued that humanity had achieved its objectives. The threat was eliminated. Vengeance was satisfied. Continuing the war served no purpose but cruelty. Kang's response arrived within hours. The Valdari have no standing to negotiate. The only acceptable outcome is unconditional surrender with terms decided solely by humanity. Continued resistance will result in continued consequences. Hana had to deliver this message to Nirazol personally. She watched the ambassador's face as understanding dawned. The Valdari would not be allowed to negotiate their own fate. They could only surrender completely and hope for mercy from people who had forgotten what mercy meant. Nirazol left the prison in despair. She composed her report for High Archon Velmara. The humans will not stop. They will not negotiate. They will not show compassion. We are fighting for survival against a species that views extinction of enemies as acceptable policy. Our only hope is complete submission and prayer that they choose to let us live. Admiral Kang read intelligence reports about growing unrest on Earth, veterans questioning the war, civilians doubting the methods, underground movements calling for peace. He knew these problems would get worse. Wars always created domestic opposition eventually. He needed to end the war quickly before support collapsed. He approved Operation Final Dawn, the invasion of the Valdari homeworld, complete conquest of the Empire's heart, total elimination of Valdari military capability. He projected 3 months from start to finish. He assembled his fleet commanders and gave them their orders. They would attack the homeworld with overwhelming force. They would show no mercy to military targets. They would spare civilians where possible but accept collateral damage as necessary. They would end this war through absolute victory. Kang ended his briefing with a speech. He told his officers that they were not heroes. They were necessary evils. They were doing things that future generations would condemn. They would be judged harshly by history. But they were protecting humanity from extinction. That was worth any price, even their souls. The fleet departed for Valdari space. 2,000 warships. 500,000 ground troops. Enough firepower to destroy planets. They left Earth. Behind, that beautiful blue world full of people who did not understand what was being done in their name. The Deathworlders were going to war one last time. And this time they were going to finish it. The lights on Research Station Harmony 9 flickered for the third time in an hour. Dr. Hana pressed her crystalline hand against the window and stared into the darkness of space. Her skin changed from soft blue to worried purple. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The station floated quietly in the Valaris system, far from any major trade routes. It was a small place with only 43 scientists and engineers from different species. They studied gas giants and collected data. Nothing exciting ever happened here. That was the point. Harmony 9 was supposed to be boring and safe. In the control room, Engineer Taman checked the sensors for the 5th time. He was human, young, only 24 years old. He had transferred to this station 6 months ago because he wanted a quiet posting. Now he wished he had stayed on Mars. The readings on his screen made no sense. There was a massive energy signature at the edge of the system. It was getting bigger. Dr. Hana, you need to see this, Taman called out. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. He had learned to stay calm during training on Earth. Humans were good at that, staying calm when everything went wrong. Hana rushed over and looked at his screen. Her skin turned deep red. Fear. In all her years of research, she had never seen anything like this. The energy signature was not natural. It was not a star. It was not a comet. It was a tear in space itself. What is that? She whispered. Taman did not answer. He could not. The tear was opening. Something was coming through. The sensors started screaming with alerts, ships, hundreds of them. Thousands of them. They were not like any ships in the Coalition database. These ships were alive, organic, covered in what looked like armor made of bone and chitin. Send a message to the Coalition, Hana ordered. Her voice was high and frightened. Tell them we need help. Tell them something is coming through. Taman started typing the emergency message. His fingers moved fast across the controls. But before he could finish, the first ships reached the station. They did not slow down. They did not send messages. They just attacked. The station shook violently. Explosions echoed through the walls. People screamed in the corridors. The alien ships were tearing through Harmony 9 like it was made of paper. The station's small defense systems fired back, but it was useless. Like throwing rocks at a hurricane. Get to the safe rooms, Taman shouted. He grabbed Hana's arm and pulled her away from the console. But he did not leave. Not yet. He had one more thing to do. Go. I will catch up. He pushed her toward the exit. She looked back at him with wide eyes, but she ran. She had to. The walls were breaking. The air was leaking out into space. Time was running out. Taman turned back to his console. The communication array was damaged but still working. Barely. He typed as fast as he could. A simple message. A distress signal. He sent it to the Coalition Council. He sent it to every nearby system. And he sent it to Earth. The message was short. Research Station Harmony 9 under attack. Unknown hostile force. We need help. They are killing everyone. Please, someone, anyone. He hit send just as the communication array exploded. Sparks flew everywhere. The room filled with smoke. Taman covered his face and ran for the door. Behind him, the alien creatures were breaking through the hull. He could hear them. Clicking sounds, screeching sounds, sounds that made his blood run cold. 300 light-years away, the Coalition Council received the distress signal. They gathered in their great chamber on the capital world. Representatives from over 300 species sat in comfortable seats and discussed what to do. We should form a committee, one representative said. We need to study this threat carefully. Is Harmony 9 technically in our jurisdiction? Another asked. The station is in neutral space. Perhaps we should wait for more information. What about the cost? Who will pay for a rescue mission? They talked and talked. Hours passed. The Coalition had not fought a real war in over 1,000 years. They had forgotten how. They had forgotten what it meant to act quickly when lives were in danger. They were peaceful and civilized and completely unprepared for what was happening. But the message also reached Earth. It arrived at the Terran Defense Network headquarters in orbit above the planet. Admiral Minho was on duty when it came through. He was an older man with gray hair and scars on his face. He had fought in the colony wars 30 years ago. He knew what war looked like. He read the message once. Then he read it again. Then he picked up his communicator and said 4 simple words. "Get me the fleet." His second-in-command, Commander Deho, looked up from his station. "Sir, the Coalition has not authorized a response yet. Harmony 9 is not in our territory." "I do not care about authorization," Minho said quietly. His voice was calm but hard as steel. "One of our people sent that message. Taman Park, he is human. He is one of ours. And someone is trying to kill him. But sir, we are going, Commander. That is final. Get me the 5th Fleet, full battle readiness. We leave in 3 hours." Deho stared at his admiral for a moment. Then he nodded. He understood. Humans did not abandon their people. Ever. It was not in their nature. Within an hour, ships began gathering near Mars. Big ships. Warships. The kind of ships that made other species nervous. The humans called them practical. Everyone else called them terrifying. These were vessels built by a species that had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and world wars. Every design choice was made with one question in mind. Will this help us survive? The flagship was the TDS Indomitable. It was 3 kilometers long and covered in armor that could withstand nuclear explosions. Its weapons could destroy small moons. Inside, 3,000 crew members prepared for battle. They did not know what they were fighting yet. They did not care. Someone needed help. That was enough. Captain Jiwan stood on the bridge of her assault carrier, the Retribution. She was checking the status of her Marine battalions. Thousands of soldiers in powered armor, ready to board enemy ships or fight on hostile ground. They trained for situations like this. Humans were good at fighting. Very good. It was a skill learned over millions of years of evolution on a planet that tried to kill everything on it. Commander Heron commanded a squadron of destroyers. Fast ships with heavy guns. Her screens showed dozens of other vessels joining the formation. Cruisers, frigates, support ships, and fighters. Hundreds of small, deadly fighters piloted by men and women who trained their entire lives for this moment. Lieutenant Yuna sat in her fighter cockpit and ran through her pre-flight checks. She was young but skilled. One of the best pilots in the fleet. Her fighter was called a Reaper. It was small, fast, and carried enough missiles to take down ships 10 times its size. The Coalition thought human fighters were insane. Too aggressive. Too risky. Humans called them effective. On the Indomitable, Admiral Minho watched his fleet assemble. 73 ships. 20,000 personnel. It was the largest military force humanity had deployed since joining the Coalition 40 years ago. Most species were shocked when they learned humans had this kind of military power. The Coalition had very small defense forces. They believed in peace and diplomacy. Humans believed in peace too. They just also believed in being ready for war. Because Earth had taught them a simple lesson. Hope for the best but prepare for the worst. Ambassador Jisoo stood beside the Admiral. She was one of Earth's diplomats to the Coalition. She had insisted on joining the mission. "The Council is going to be very upset about this," she said quietly. "Let them be upset," Minho replied. A human engineer sent a distress signal. He believed someone would answer. "I will not make him a liar. Do you think he is still alive?" Minho was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I hope so. But even if he is not, whoever attacked that station needs to learn a lesson. You do not attack our people. You do not attack our friends. There are consequences." The fleet finished assembling. Minho gave the order. "All ships prepare for jump to hyperspace. Destination, Valeris system. Maximum speed. We have people to save." One by one, the ships activated their jump drives. Space itself seemed to tear open as they disappeared into hyperspace. The journey would take 4 days. 4 days to reach Harmony 9. 4 days to find out if they were coming to save people or to avenge them. Across the galaxy, the Coalition Council was still debating. They would debate for 3 more days. By the time they finally decided to send help, it would be too late. But it did not matter. The humans were already on their way, because humans had learned something important during their long, violent history on Earth. When someone cries for help, you do not wait. You do not debate. You do not form committees. You act, you move, you fight. And when you find the people who hurt innocents, you make sure they never do it again. The human fleet moved through hyperspace faster than most coalition ships could manage. The journey to the Valaris system would take 4 days. Inside the massive ships, thousands of men and women prepared for what was coming. They trained. They checked their weapons. They studied what little information they had about the enemy. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Minho held a meeting with his senior officers. The holographic display showed what they knew about the attackers. It was not much. The ships were organic, biological. They moved in swarms. Intelligence reports from the Coalition database identified them as the Vrex, a species that had destroyed 17 civilizations over the past 1,000 years. They are a hive mind, Commander Deho explained to the room. Each ship is connected to a central intelligence. They do not negotiate. They do not surrender. They only consume. Every world they find, they strip it of resources and move on. Captain Jiwan leaned forward. Have they ever been defeated? No, Deho said simply. Every species that encountered them either fled or was destroyed. The Coalition has been trying to avoid them for centuries. The room was quiet. Then Lieutenant Yuna, attending the meeting as squadron leader, spoke up. Admiral, permission to speak freely? Granted. The Coalition species never defeated them because they do not know how to fight. We do. This is what we trained for. This is what Earth prepared us for. Minho nodded slowly. The young pilot was right. Humans were different from other species in the galaxy. Very different. And it all came down to one simple fact. Earth was a death world. Ambassador Jisoo had heard this term before, but she asked anyway. She wanted the Coalition observers on the ship to understand. There were 3 of them, scientists who wanted to study how humans fought. They sat quietly in the corner of the room, watching everything with wide eyes. Commander Deho, could you explain to our guests what a death world is? Deho looked at the Coalition observers. One of them was Velthian, like Dr. Hana. The others were species the humans barely recognized. A death world is a planet where everything tries to kill you, he began. Most species in the Coalition evolved on paradise worlds. Stable weather, plenty of food, few predators. Your planets wanted you to survive. He pressed a button and Earth appeared on the hologram. Earth tried to kill us. For millions of years, ice ages that froze entire continents, volcanoes that blocked out the sun, asteroids that caused mass extinctions, diseases that killed billions, and predators. So many predators. Humans were not the strongest species on our planet. We were prey. But we learned. We adapted. We survived, Captain Jiwan added. We developed tools because we had to. We learned to work together because alone we died. We created weapons because everything around us was trying to eat us. And when we finally became the dominant species on Earth, we did not stop. We kept preparing. We kept training, because we knew that staying soft meant death. One of the Coalition observers, a small creature with blue fur, raised a tentacle nervously. But surely you do not need those skills anymore. You have technology now. You have civilization. Lieutenant Yuna smiled. It was not a friendly smile. We have civilization because we have those skills. Every human child learns survival training in school. Every adult serves in the defense forces for at least 2 years. We do not forget our history. We do not forget what it took to survive. That memory is coded into our DNA. That sounds exhausting, another observer said quietly. It is, Minho agreed, but it keeps us alive. And right now it might keep Harmony 9 alive too. The days passed slowly. Across the fleet, soldiers prepared in different ways. In the fighter bays, pilots ran simulation after simulation. They practiced attack runs against theoretical Vrex ships. They studied formations. They memorized emergency procedures. Human pilots were trained to fly even after their ships took catastrophic damage. Coalition pilots were trained to eject safely. It was a very different philosophy. In the Marine decks, Colonel Kyung led his troops through combat drills. They practiced boarding actions. Room clearing, close quarters combat. The Marines were enormous in their powered armor. Each suit was equipped with weapons that could punch through tank armor. But it was not the armor that made them dangerous. It was the humans inside, men and women who had been training since childhood to fight, to endure, to win. Sergeant Minji checked her squad's equipment for the 10th time. Her soldiers did not complain. They understood. In combat, a loose strap could kill you. A malfunctioning weapon could kill you. Humans checked everything twice. Then they checked it again. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst was not just a saying. It was survival. The coalition observers spent their time watching and taking notes. They were fascinated and horrified in equal measure. Humans were so aggressive, so violent, so prepared for destruction. One of them, Ambassador Lyra, asked Commander Deho a question that had been bothering her. Do your people enjoy this? The violence? The warfare? Deho thought about it carefully. No, we do not enjoy it, but we understand it. Violence is a tool, like a hammer or a computer. It is not good or evil by itself. What matters is how you use it. We use it to protect, to defend, to make sure that people who cry for help are not ignored. He paused, then continued. Your species, Ambassador, evolved on worlds where cooperation was natural, where resources were abundant. You learned to solve problems through discussion and compromise. That is beautiful. But humans evolved on a world where nature did not compromise, where predators did not negotiate. We learned that sometimes you must fight, and if you must fight, you fight to win, completely, overwhelmingly, so that the threat never comes back. Ambassador Lyra did not respond. She was thinking about her sister, Dr. Hana, who was on Harmony 9. If she was still alive, the thought made Lyra's skin turn dark blue with sadness. On the third day of the journey, the fleet received a transmission. It was faint and broken, but it was there. A signal from Harmony 9, not a distress call, just a simple beacon, a sign that the station's emergency systems were still working, which meant someone might still be alive. We have survivors, Commander Deho reported. His voice was calm, but there was relief in it. The signal indicates sealed sections. Life support is minimal but functional. Admiral Minho stood up from his chair. All hands listen up. We have confirmed survivors on Harmony 9. That changes our mission parameters. This is not just a combat operation anymore. This is a rescue. Captain G1, prepare your Marines for immediate boarding action. Commander Heron, your destroyers will provide cover. Lieutenant Yuna, your fighters will clear a path. He took a breath. The Vreks are still at Harmony 9, they have not left. That means they are either building something or waiting for something. Either way, we are going to hit them hard and fast. We get in, we get our people, we get out. And then we teach these things what happens when they attack humans and their friends. The crew responded with a shout that echoed through the ship. It was a war cry, old and primal, the sound that predators make before a hunt. The coalition observers flinched at the noise. They had never heard anything like it. So much rage, so much determination. Ambassador Lyra understood in that moment why humanity was so different. They were not just soldiers. They were survivors. And survivors did whatever it took to live and to protect their own. On the fourth day, the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Valaris system. Sensors immediately picked up the station. Harmony 9 was still there, but it was covered in strange growths, organic structures that pulsed with life. Vrex hive material. The station had been infected like a disease. Around the station, thousands of Vrex ships floated in space. Bioships, living vessels grown rather than built. Each one looked like a nightmare. All teeth and claws and organic weapons. They moved in patterns, circling the station like sharks around prey. When the human fleet appeared, the Vrex reacted immediately. Their ships turned toward the newcomers. There was no communication. No warning. The Vrex did not speak. They just attacked. Admiral Minho watched the enemy swarm begin to move. He was calm. Years of experience had taught him not to panic. All ships, battle stations. Weapons free. Rules of engagement. Destroy everything that moves. Show them what Deathworlders can do. He turned to his weapons officer. Fire! The Indomitable opened fire. Every weapon. Every gun. The ship shook with the recoil. Across the fleet, 73 ships did the same. The space between the human fleet and the Vrex swarm lit up like a new star was being born. Kinetic weapons, missiles, plasma, energy beams. Everything humanity had developed over centuries of warfare was unleashed at once. The coalition observers watched in shock. They had never seen anything like this. Coalition ships fought with precision, with carefully aimed shots, with elegant tactics. Humans fought like a hammer smashing into glass. There was nothing elegant about it. It was pure, overwhelming violence, and it was devastatingly effective. The first wave of wreck ships simply ceased to exist, vaporized by kinetic rounds moving at a fraction of light speed. The second wave fared no better. Human weapons were designed for one purpose: to destroy utterly and completely. Ambassador Lyra stared at the tactical display. Her voice was barely a whisper. "What have we brought into the galaxy?" But the Vrex were not helpless. The Talos 9 system transformed over 12 days. What was once a peaceful corner of space became the most heavily fortified location in the galaxy. Human engineers worked around the clock. They turned asteroids into weapons platforms. They seeded debris fields with remote mines. They built defensive networks that would make attacking a nightmare. Fleet Admiral Soman arrived with the 3rd Fleet on day 4. She brought another 100 warships and 20,000 more Marines. The combined fleet now numbered over 300 vessels. It was the largest military force assembled since the founding of the Coalition. And it was still not enough. The War Council met aboard the Indomitable. Admiral Minho, Fleet Admiral Soman, War Chief Kragan, and their senior officers gathered around the tactical display. Intelligence reports showed the enemy force heading their way. Over 3,000 Vrex bioships, 5 massive hive carriers at the center. Each carrier was the size of a small moon. "We are outnumbered 10-1, Commander Deho said quietly. War Chief Kragan laughed. It was a deep rumbling sound. "Acceptable odds. The Korthan have fought worse." The humans around the table nodded in agreement. Lieutenant Yuna smiled. 10-1 just means we get more targets. The Coalition observers could not understand this attitude. These beings were facing overwhelming odds, and they were joking about it. Ambassador Lyra, who had stayed with the fleet, finally asked the question that bothered her. "How can you be so calm? You might all die." Fleet Admiral Soman looked at her. "We might. But the Sheelan will not. 4 billion people are counting on us. That is what matters. We did not come here to survive. We came here to protect." She turned back to the display. "Here is the plan. We are not going to defend Talos 9. We are going to turn this entire system into a trap. When the Vrex arrive, they will think they have us surrounded. But they will be in our kill box, fighting by our rules." The strategy was bold, aggressive, very human. The fleet would not wait for the Vrex to attack. They would strike first, hard and fast, using every advantage they could create. The Coalition way was to defend and negotiate. The human way was to attack and overwhelm. Captain Jiwan received her orders: evacuate the planet. 4 billion Sheelan needed to be moved to safety. It was an impossible task, but humans specialized in impossible tasks. Transport ships arrived from across human space, civilian vessels, military carriers, even private ships volunteered. The evacuation began immediately. The Sheelan government was skeptical at first. How could anyone move 4 billion people in 12 days? Then they saw human logistics in action. Every ship had a schedule. Every transport route was optimized. Every person had an assigned evacuation slot. It was like watching a machine operate. Efficient, relentless, unstoppable. By day 8, over 3 billion Sheelan had been evacuated. The rest would follow in the remaining time. It was working. The impossible was becoming possible. Because humans did not believe in impossible. They believed in finding solutions. Throughout the preparation, personal stories emerged. Lieutenant Yuna's fighter squadron adopted a Sheelan child named Vela. The little girl had lost her parents to a Vrex raid years ago. She was a refugee from another system. When she asked Yuna why humans were helping, the pilot knelt down to her level. "Because someone should have helped you before. We are here now, and we are not leaving. That is a promise." Sergeant Minji, recovered from her injuries at Harmony 9, led her squad in training Sheelan volunteers. Most had never held a weapon, but they wanted to help defend their world. She taught them basic tactics: how to take cover, how to aim, how to survive. She was honest with them. You are not soldiers. You are survivors. If things go wrong, your job is to run, hide, and live. Let us do the dying. We are better at it. Dr. Hana found herself working in the medical preparation teams. Field hospitals were being established across the remaining population centers. She worked alongside human medical staff. Nurse Isel was there, organizing supplies with the same quiet efficiency she showed on the Indomitable. You plan for everything, Hana observed. Even defeat. Isel smiled sadly. We plan for the worst because we have lived through it. Hope for the best. Prepare for the worst. It is not pessimism. It is survival. Taman used his engineering skills to help set up defensive systems. He worked with a human engineer named Borum. Together they turned orbital platforms into weapon stations. It was not much against a fleet of thousands, but every advantage mattered. During a break, Borum asked him a question. Any regrets? You could have stayed on Earth, safe. Instead, you are here. Taman thought about it. No regrets. I sent that distress signal because I believed help would come. It did. Now I owe it to everyone else who needs help to stand and fight. Borum nodded. You are thinking like a human now? Good. We need more people like that in the galaxy. On day 12, the evacuation reached 97% completion. Over 3.8 billion Shilin were safe. The remaining civilians were being loaded onto the last transport ships. Everything was ready. The trap was set. The fleet was in position. All they needed now was for the enemy to arrive. They did not have to wait long. Sensors detected the Vrex swarm at the edge of the system. They dropped out of hyperspace in a formation designed to inspire terror. 3,000 bioships spreading across space like a dark cloud. At the center, the 5 hive carriers pulsed with organic light, each one directing thousands of smaller vessels. The Vrex did not communicate, did not negotiate. They simply began their approach, slowly, confidently. They had done this 1,000 times before. They knew how it would end. Another civilization would fall. Another world would be consumed. But this time would be different. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Minho watched the enemy approach. Around him, the crew was tense but focused. Years of training, months of preparation. It all came down to this moment. Fleet status? He asked quietly. All ships at battle stations, Commander Deho reported. Weapons hot, Marines ready. Evacuation, 97% complete. The last transports are jumping out now. And our surprise? Armed and waiting, sir. Minho nodded. He opened a fleet-wide channel. His voice carried to every ship, every Marine, every pilot, every person who had come to defend Talos 9. This is Admiral Minho, to all Defense Force units. Today we stand between the Vrex swarm and innocent lives. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten the defenseless. We are outnumbered. We are outgunned. We are facing an enemy that has destroyed civilizations. He paused. And we are going to win. For Earth. For our allies. For everyone depending on us. All ships, execute Attack Plan Omega. Let these things learn about Death World warfare. The human fleet surged forward. They did not wait for the Vrex to attack. They brought the battle to the enemy. 300 ships accelerating at maximum speed. Behind them, the Allied vessels followed. Velthian cruisers, Rishani support ships, 12 Korthan dreadnoughts that looked like moving fortresses. The coalition observers watching from safe distance were shocked. They are actually attacking, one of them transmitted to the council. The humans are insane, another replied. But humans were not insane. They were doing what they had done for their entire history, taking the fight to the enemy. On their terms, with everything they had. Because waiting was how you lost. Defending was how you died. Attacking was how you survived. As the two fleets closed, Admiral Minho gave one more order. Just 2 words. But they carried the weight of millions of years of evolution. The weight of a species that survived ice ages and asteroid impacts and countless wars. 2 words that meant everything. Fire everything. The asteroid mines detonated first. 16 massive fusion explosions that lit up space like new stars. The Vrex advance formation flew directly into the blast zone. Hundreds of bioships simply ceased to exist, vaporized instantly. The shockwave crippled hundreds more. The perfect opening move. But the Vrex did not panic. Could not panic. The hive mind simply adjusted, routing around the devastation, splitting into multiple attack vectors. and then the human fleet hit them from 3 sides at once. Admiral Minho from the front, Fleet Admiral Soman from above, War Chief Kragan from below. A perfect vice. A perfect trap. What followed was the largest space battle in 1,000 years. Thousands of ships exchanging fire, missiles streaking through the void, energy weapons creating deadly beams of light, kinetic rounds moving at impossible speeds, explosions everywhere. It was chaos. Beautiful, terrible chaos. Lieutenant Yuna led her fighter squadron straight into the heart of the enemy formation. Their target was the hive carriers, the massive command ships directing the swarm. If they could kill those, the Vrex would lose coordination, become vulnerable. Reaper lead to all birds. Primary targets are the big ones. Make your shots count. And remember, we fly through hell to get the job done. Her squadron responded as one. Through hell and back lead. They dove into the Vrex swarm. Hundreds of bioships tried to intercept them. Point defense fire filled space with deadly projectiles. But human pilots had trained their entire lives for this. They flew with precision that bordered on insanity, using maneuvers that would kill coalition pilots from the G-forces alone, diving, weaving, spinning through enemy fire like they were dancing. Lieutenant Junho stayed on Yuna's wing. They had destroyed civilizations before. They were adapting, learning. The swarm split apart. The Vrex swarm surged forward like a living wave. Thousands of bioships, each one a nightmare of teeth and claws. They had destroyed 17 civilizations using this tactic. Overwhelming numbers. Relentless aggression. It always worked. But the Vrex had never fought humans before. The human fleet did not retreat, did not hesitate. Admiral Minho gave a simple order. All batteries, continuous fire. Show them no mercy. What happened next would be studied by military academies across the galaxy for generations. The human ships unleashed hell. Railgun slugs tore through Vrex bioships like paper. Each round traveled so fast that when it hit, the target simply exploded. The kinetic energy turned solid matter into expanding clouds of debris. Commander Heron's destroyer squadron created what humans called a flak screen. Thousands of explosive projectiles filled the space ahead of them. Any Vrex ship trying to push through was shredded by the wall of metal and fire. It was not elegant. It was not precise. But it turned the battlefield into a killing zone. Lieutenant Yuna led her fighter squadron into the chaos. The coalition observers watched in horror as human fighters dove directly into Vrex formations. These pilots did not keep safe distances. They flew through enemy fire like it was nothing. Their fighters were built to take damage and keep flying. Armor instead of shields, redundancy instead of elegance. Reaper lead to all birds. Yuna's voice came over the comm. She sounded excited, almost happy. Stay in your pairs. Pick your targets. Let's rack up some kills. Her wingman, Lieutenant Junho, responded with a laugh. 3 down already. You're falling behind, lead. Not for long, Yuna replied. She locked onto a cluster of Vrex bioships and fired her missiles. 4 streaks of light crossed the distance in seconds. 4 explosions followed. 5 now. Catch up. The casual banter during combat unnerved the coalition observers. Ambassador Lyra could not understand it. How could they joke while fighting for their lives? Commander Deho noticed her confusion. They are not being disrespectful, he explained quietly. It is how humans cope with stress. Humor in the face of death. It keeps them calm, keeps them focused, and it shows they are not afraid. But they should be afraid, Lyra whispered. The Vrex have destroyed entire species. Humans are afraid, Deho said, but they fight anyway. That is what makes them dangerous. The Vrex, however, were learning. As a hive mind, they adapted quickly. The swarm split into multiple groups attacking from different angles. Some ships deployed biological chaff that scrambled sensors. Others released small drone organisms that tried to attach to human ships and eat through the hulls. Admiral Minho watched the tactical display. They are adapting. Good. Let them think they have figured us out. He opened a channel to Captain Jiwan. Captain, you are cleared for boarding operations. Get our people off that station, Jiwan smiled. She had been waiting for this. Roger that, Admiral. Marines, we are go for launch. All drop pods prepare for immediate deployment. The assault carrier Retribution launched hundreds of drop pods. They were heavily armored capsules designed to punch through defenses and deliver Marines directly to their target. The Vrex tried to intercept them, But the pods were too fast, too heavily armored. They slammed into Harmony 9's hull like meteorites, cutting through the Vrek's organic growths and breaching directly into the station. Colonel Kyung was first out of his pod. His powered armor made him look like a walking tank. In his hands, he carried an assault rifle that could punch through steel walls. Behind him, his Marines formed up in perfect formation. They had trained for this scenario 1,000 times. The interior of Harmony 9 was a nightmare. The Vreks had corrupted entire sections, turning them into hive spaces. Organic matter covered the walls. Strange sounds echoed through the corridors. It was dark and smelled of rot and death. "Third Marines, this is the objective." Kyung's voice was steady over the tactical net. "Survivors are in sections D through G. We push through, grab them, and extract. Anyone gets in our way, put them down. Move out." The Marines advanced methodically. When Vrek's drones emerged from the darkness, the humans met them with overwhelming firepower. The sound of gunfire echoed through the station. Assault rifles, shotguns, grenade launchers. If one bullet did not work, humans used 20. If 20 did not work, they used explosives. Sergeant Minji led her squad through a collapsed corridor. They moved in a practiced formation, covering each other's backs. When a massive Vrex warrior burst through a wall, Minji did not hesitate. Her shotgun roared. The creature went down in a spray of green blood. "Clear," she reported calmly, like it was just another day at work. Behind her, Private Hyon made a comment. "That thing killed a whole coalition security team according to the reports. Took us 3 seconds. Less talking, more walking," Minji ordered, but she was smiling inside her helmet. Hyon was right. The Vreks were dangerous, but humans had fought worse things on Earth. At least the Vreks did not have venom. Or pack tactics, or intelligence. Actually, the Vreks did have pack tactics and intelligence, but it did not matter. Humans had more experience with both. Deep in Section E, Taman and the other survivors huddled in a sealed laboratory. They had been fighting for days with improvised weapons and no hope of rescue. Dr. Hana sat against a wall, her skin a dull gray color. Exhaustion and despair. They were out of food, almost out of water. The Vreks were outside, scratching at the doors. Then they heard something different. Explosions, gunfire, human voices shouting orders. Taman stood up, hardly daring to hope. "Did you hear that?" Hana listened. More explosions. Closer now. Then a voice over a speaker. "This is Colonel Kyung, 3rd Marine Division. If there are survivors in this section, respond on Emergency Channel 7. Taman grabbed the emergency communicator with shaking hands. "This is Engineer Taman Park. We have 42 survivors in Lab E7. The door is sealed, but we cannot hold much longer." There was a pause. Then, "Hold tight, Mr. Park, Marines incoming." 30 seconds. "Get away from the door." 29 seconds later, the door exploded inward. Smoke filled the room. Through it stepped the largest humans Taman had ever seen. They wore massive, powered armor and carried weapons that looked like they could destroy buildings. Colonel Kyung stepped forward, his helmet retracting to show his scarred face. "Taman Park?" he asked, scanning the terrified survivors. Taman nodded, unable to speak. Kyung smiled. It was a grim smile, but genuine. "Welcome to the rescue, kid. Earth does not abandon its people. Come on, we are getting you out of here." Dr. Hana stared at the Marines in amazement. These were not the peaceful humans she had met at scientific conferences. These were warriors, veterans of a world that had forged them in fire and blood and endless struggle. She felt afraid of them, but also incredibly relieved, because if anyone could save them, it was these terrifying, wonderful Deathworlders. The evacuation was swift but costly. The Marines formed a protective barrier around the civilians as they moved through the station. Vrex warriors threw themselves at the humans, trying to stop the rescue. But Marine doctrine was simple: protect the civilians at all costs. Every Marine knew they might die. They accepted it, because saving lives was worth dying for. Private Hyon took shrapnel protecting a Velthian child. He went down hard. Sergeant Minji dragged him behind cover while her squad laid down, suppressing fire. "Medic!" she shouted.
Hyun's hit.
A combat medic rushed over, working quickly to stabilize him. Hyun groaned. "Sorry, Sarge, slowing everyone down. You saved a kid," Minji said firmly. "That is what we are here for. You did good." She looked at the medic. "How bad?" "He will live, but we need to get him to the ship." The medic slapped a medical patch on Hyon's armor that would keep him alive until they reached proper medical facilities. Within an hour, all survivors were aboard evacuation shuttles heading back to the fleet. Colonel Kyung watched the last shuttle lift off. Then he did something unexpected. He planted a device on the station's main reactor and linked it to a remote detonator. "All Marines extract immediately," he ordered. "Double time. We have 3 minutes until this place goes up." On the indomitable, Admiral Minho received the confirmation. "All personnel clear, sir," Captain Ji-won reported. Final count: 42 civilians rescued, 17 Marines wounded, 2 critical, 0 fatalities. "Excellent work, Captain," Minho said. Then he turned to weapons control. "Activate the package Colonel Kyung left. Maximum yield." Harmony 9 exploded. The blast was massive. The station's fusion reactors detonated in a cascading chain reaction that could be seen from 3-star systems away. Thousands of wrecked ships were still on and around the station. They died instantly. The explosion cut through the wreck swarm like a knife, leaving it disoriented and vulnerable. Ambassador Lyra stared at the display in shock. "You destroyed it. You destroyed the entire station." "There were wrecks still aboard." "Yes," Minho said simply. "They needed to learn a lesson. When you attack our friends, you do not get to retreat. You do not get to regroup. You die." He opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, the enemy is disorganized. Attack pattern Delta, destroy them all." The human fleet turned and counterattacked. What followed was not a battle. It was systematic extermination. The wreck swarm that had destroyed Harmony 9 was annihilated. Every ship,